Sorry, I just thought of a thing that I learned.
What?
Well, that you taught me at some. So the USB-C.
Mm-hmm. What about it?
There's so many things about it that I've learned. Okay, so USB-C is the more modern version of a USB,
Yes.
and now they're being used
Technically,
even.
it's called USB 3.1.
Oh, why do we call it USB-C sometimes?
USB-C is the form factor, which is the plug. So, but what was your question before you?
I mean, it wasn't really a specific question, except, I guess let me put it in like this. To get the fast charging rates that are possible with the USB 3.1, aka USB-C, you must have both ends of it be USB-C. I mean, unless, of course, it's hardwired to wall.
So, I think
Right?
so. The way USB-C works, USB-C is the form factor. So that's the little circle that can
What is form factor?
the physical form of it.
The piece that plugs into another.
Yeah. So because back so there was so there's two different parts to a USB. There's the software or firmware that it is, which is the 2.0, 3.0, 3.1, and then there is the form factor,
Which is the hardware.
yeah, which is like the physical form, yeah, hardware.
Do they not call it hardware because it's not very techy,
Well,
complex?
hardware consists of the whole thing. So I don't know technically about the cabling. I assume the cabling itself, like the wire itself, is different. But I know the form factor itself. The form factor is literally just the part that plugs in, and how that physical part has changed. Right. So the USB-C is now that new ovalish one that can be plugged in upside down or right side up.
Yep.
A USB what is it? USB type A or B?
I didn't even know there were two other ones.
Um, those are that's the traditional one that you think of when you think of USB that only fits in one way.
Yeah, and and that's the thing. I have a cable that has USB regular that at one end and USB-C at the other end. And then when I went to plug that in to the connector that makes it adaptable to the wall's outlet, you told me that it wouldn't be doing the fast rate, the USB-C rate, because of one end being USB-A or
Okay, so yeah, the USB Type B is something that you don't very use often, but USB Type A is the one that you're kind of thinking of most often when you think of USB. And so back to the form factor. So the USB-C to USB-C, technically, if you have there is a USB-A version that uses 3.1 technology. It's often you can see it, or it looks like the USB Type A, but they have a blue plug-in instead of a black plug-in. That is the signal that if you see it on the computer and things like that, that usually identifies it as a USB 3.0. But also, I think nowadays it's 3.1. Your computer in the front, you know how you have those two USBs that don't work?
yeah.
Those are blue USB
Yeah.
ports. Those are USB 3.0. Now I think nowadays when you get a new computer, those would just be USB 3.1.
Okay.
But your motherboard doesn't have the capability of USB 3.0 plug-in for the front panel. I actually don't think your motherboard has any 3.0s on it. So you
I
don't
don't
have that
know.
ability for 3.0. but your tower does. So if you get a newer motherboard that has USB 3.0 configuration, then you could plug that in and use USB 3.0.
Okay.
And then now, yeah, I think they do have USB 3.1 in Type A form factor too, which would just be the blue ones, but with a newer version of it. Basically, it's faster, right? We already know that. It is it carries data faster too, so like the transfer rate is faster. It can not only transfer data and electricity, but it can transfer video and audio. So it can actually replace HDMI cables.
USB-C.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which is the first USB to be able to do that.
Is it the same quality as HDMI?
It's faster than HDMI in most cases.
HDMI cables also come with like gold plating and different things that way, right? That are supposed to help improve.
Theoretically, HDMI cables you can get. I think your general HDMI cable that you buy from like Best Buy or something will just be a standard 10 gigabytes per second transfer rate, which for almost anything you won't need to transfer data that fast. The exception is higher quality images like 4K images or 8K images, I think is now coming out.
Wow.
And those will need higher data transfer speed. So you can get like gold plated HDMI cables that transfer at about 20 gigs per second, which is, I believe, let me just check real fast. USB-C transfer speed. USB transfer speed at a rate of 10 gigabytes per second, which is double that of 3.0. So from 3.0 to 3.1, that's why that's a
for
huge
the USBs. Jump. Okay, but it's still slower than
the HDMI.
Depending on the HDMI.
Yeah, but your general HDMI cable, it'll be able to replace an HDMI cable.
Okay.
Let's double check that too. HDMI transfer speed. HDMI 2 can transfer data up to 18 gigabytes from so there's an HDMI 2.0, which I've never really looked into it. So HDMI 1.0 is 10 gigabytes per second, while 2.0 is up to 18 gigabytes per second. So if you are doing 4K or 8K, you're probably going to be sticking with HDMI when it comes to your plugin.
Wait, okay.
And I think, let me just check the Thunderbolt transfer.
What is a Thunderbolt?
2 transfer speed. It goes up to 20 gigabytes per second. Thunderbolt is the one that uses is the one that Apple's been using. Their little cable that's that little that small one that they've implemented after they had like that big brick cable.
Okay.
That small one is the Thunderbolt cable. Or no, that's not the Thunderbolt cable. That's Lightning. Thunderbolt is the one that they've been using for their MacBooks.
Mm.
And I think the Thunderbolt, let me just double check what it looks like.
Not right.
Okay, so the Thunderbolt cable looks like a display cable. It's like a small kind of square little plugin that
Okay.
you'll see oftentimes on video cards, or small laptops often have like a display cable. And Thunderbolt looks similar to that.
Okay.
And yeah, that's so HDMI, USB-C. So USB-C you'll start seeing on a lot of laptops now, as the only plug that they have, because their power supply will be USB-C, all their plugins will be USB-C, and you could actually use the power supply in any of the USB-C ports, and it'll always supply power because they all do everything, right?
Okay. Yes. I